Hey everybody, Mr. Hargitai here, and today we are continuing our literary journey by going to Chile. Before we jump in, a real quick call out moment. I noticed a lot of us in the previous lesson had spelled Columbia with a U, like the university, which makes sense since a lot of us are from New York. However, we want to make sure we're spelling the countries properly, so this time let's make sure that we're spelling Chile with an E and not with an I like the restaurant. Alright, let's do the intro. So yesterday we learned about Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. As you all remember from the video, Neruda is famous for romance as well as revolution. Many of his poems talked about love, loss, concepts like that. However, he was also very politically minded as well. Another thing that you should know about Neruda is he kind of lived this whimsical and passionate lifestyle. He had some interesting hobbies, to say the least. One of them was collecting things. Some of you might be asking, like, what do you mean by things? Don't people collect like a lot of one thing, like baseball cards or Pez dispensers or bottle caps? I don't know what else people collect, stamps. But Neruda didn't focus on just one thing. He actually collected lots of things just in general. So he collected things like seashells, butterflies, bottles, those like mermaid women that are at the front of a ship. There's a name for it, I can't remember right now, but those things, he collected those as well. And Neruda's fascination with everyday objects and ordinary things actually bled into his writing in some ways. As you might remember from the video yesterday, one of his collections of poems was called Odes elementales. Now this is a collection of odes dedicated to everyday objects. You might be asking, Mr. Hargitai, what's an ode? Fair enough, I guess an explanation is ode to you. Stop, just tell me what it is. Okay, so an ode is a short poem that is meant to praise something. It's usually lyric, meaning that it could be sung. Probably the most famous example of an ode in art would probably be Beethoven's Ode to Joy, that song that you definitely know the melody of. So another thing to know about odes is the fact that they're usually devoted to things that are kind of fantastic or wonderful in nature, like a beautiful sunset, the peak of a mountain, a beloved hero that everybody adores. So what's interesting is that Neruda would actually focus on everyday common objects. He wrote odes to things like watermelons, or socks, or tuna. And he would often write about these things with this kind of epic tone where he made these ordinary seeming things seem extraordinary. So at this point you're going to want to pause the video and go to the copy of the text. The text that we're going to be reading right now is Ode to a Large Tuna in the Market. So now that you've read this poem about the tuna, let's try to make some sense out of what he's saying here. My own personal interpretation is something like this. When most of us see a dead tuna in the marketplace, we don't really think much of it, right? It's just kind of there, flopped out, dead, you buy it or you don't, and that's it. However, what Neruda does is make us think a little bit about the extraordinary story that fish must have had before it came to that marketplace. He consistently refers to the sea as this dark, terrifying abyss. This is actually pretty fair considering something like 95% of the deep sea and ocean has been unexplored by humans. It's dark, wet, filled with predators who are ready to attack all the time from all angles. Something I think about way more often than I should is probably the fact that, like, as a fish, your whole life you are constantly living in fear of being eaten by a bigger fish.
There's always a bigger fish.
But Neruda points out that this large tuna must have lived an extraordinary life to get to the size that he was, right? This tuna actually survived the abyss for a very long time, up until the very end when he got caught by a human. The dangers it faced were unfathomable. We can't even imagine them. There's actually something that's kind of sad about this, that this fish lived such an incredible life that we have no idea about, and now it's just kind of lying there unceremoniously in this ice tray in a grocery store. So that's kind of what I get from this poem, but let's take a look at the specific language he uses to see how we can get that. So stanza 1. Here, among the market vegetables, this torpedo from the ocean depths, a missile that swam, now lying in front of me, dead. So here we already have some figurative language. Were you able to pick up where it is? Yeah, this fish is not literally a torpedo from the ocean. It's not literally a missile. So here we see a comparison being made, but do we see like or as? Nah. So we know that this has got to be a metaphor. This fish is described as a missile, as a torpedo. It's being compared to a weapon. So it's this kind of powerful thing that's living in the ocean and speeding through it all the time. That's more the impact of using this metaphor here. Stanza 3. Only you, dark bullet, barreled from the depths, carrying only your one wound, but resurgent, always renewed, locked into the current, fins fletched like wings in the torrent, in the coursing of the underwater dark, like a grieving arrow, sea javelin, a nerveless, oiled harpoon. Again, we got some metaphors and similes in here, so let's just take a look at the similes since we already saw some metaphors before. Metaphors in blue, just like last time. Similes are in red. So let's just save some time and look at the last one here. The tuna is described like a grieving arrow. So here we know it's a simile because of the key word like being used here for the comparison. Again, we have the idea that that tuna is being compared to a weapon, but this time the weapon is given a personal feeling. It's a grieving arrow, it's a sad arrow. So the fact that it's grieving gives us again this kind of tense tone here, this idea that this tuna lives an incredible, amazing, and like tense life before it ended up on our dinner plate. Alright, so with all that unpacked, it's time for your turn. So I've got another ode for you. This time it is the Ode to Socks. So you're gonna read this one and try to identify any figurative language you see, specifically similes and metaphors. You must identify 3 total examples of similes or metaphors. There's an exemplar provided in the Go formative, so you can find that. Again, there are more clear instructions about how long your response should be. If you have any further questions, don't hesitate to ask your teachers in the Zoom. So that's it for today. I look forward to seeing what you all produce. See you next time.